And with that being said, we are here on to Facebook Live, facebook.com/live-now-DT. Myself, Dan Tortora, and Mike Sofka analyzing the AFC South in the Fantasy Football Power Hour. Not any Fantasy Football Power Hour, the one that you need to bookmark, save, and have for you every Wednesday between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You got to be listening, you got to be watching, and of course you will find all of these broadcasts by going to WakeUpCallDT.com and either clicking on the Fantasy Football tab at the bottom of the homepage or going to the Fantasy Football tab on the top, clicking on that, or the drop-down menu, clicking on the broadcasts. Any one of those is going to bring you all here. And, of course, we share them on our Facebook at WakeUpCallDT and Twitter at CallDT. Proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub, 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. So let's bring the man in. That's my other half. And that is Mr. Mike Sofka, who, Mike, you should know this, now for all the times that we've spoken with each other, we've known each other for 10 years now, and we've broadcasted together for 3 in a kind of a set every week situation, and longer than that outside of that. So, Mike, I think it's safe to say, and I hope Lisa's okay with this, I believe you're now my longest relationship. So, just so you know.
That's all right. That's all good. Hey, I'm thankful for the opportunity every week to be able to get up and speak with you, Dan. I look forward to it every week.
So Mike is here with us this morning. We're talking about the AFC South. We'll have the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Tennessee Titans to speak on here this morning. I am so grateful to be here with Mr. Mike Sofka of Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com. I implore you all to join us on our Facebook group, which is Winning Fantasy Football. You can go right there to the search bar on Facebook and simply click on or type in Winning Fantasy Football, and you'll find us right there. So make sure that you do that. Mike and I are about to have a ton of fun with you this morning in breaking down the AFC South. So, Mike, before we get into the Houston Texans, just your thoughts on the AFC South in general, just kind of maybe some things that are going through your mind as we get set to break these teams down individually.
Yeah, every game is important in the AFC South. I mean, you look at the records last year, these teams are only a game or two apart, with Houston ended up with a 10-6 record. Then you have Tennessee at 9-7, then Indianapolis at 7-9, and then Jacksonville at 6-10. So, a lot of inner fighting in the division. Division games are always great. You can throw out the record sometimes when these teams meet up against each other. Sometimes it comes down to home field advantage. Sometimes it comes down to injury or who's playing in the game, who's not in the game, and that's what makes it interesting. It wouldn't be interesting if just one team was running away with it like the Patriots used to in the AFC East. So the AFC South, again, going to be very interesting this year.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, we see so many, like you said, how close this can get at times, and Houston hasn't necessarily always been a great team, but they've been good enough to get to 7-9 or 8-8 or 9-7 to be able to win this division as teams have struggled. The Colts, at 29 years old, lose their quarterback, Andrew Luck, who decides to retire. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been through a bunch of quarterbacks. The Tennessee Titans just extended Ryan Tannehill. And so, the quarterback, we look at the entire division, the one that you can lean on the most as far as somebody that you expect to be there is Deshaun Watson, who's young in the game. And I covered him in college at Clemson, and here he is with Houston. He's the longest tenured guy in the AFC South at quarterback because Phillip Rivers just came into the Colts. Gardner Minshew came to the Jaguars last season. And Ryan Tannehill was a test for the Tennessee Titans last season, and now he just got an extension. So kind of funny to say that as we get set here to speak on this division. And, I think, we're going to be going division by division every single week. We started with the AFC North, and we'll have the South today, and then we'll go from there to the East and the West, and then we'll jump to the NFC and do the exact same thing and break it down for you. But I'm ecstatic about this conversation because of the fact that Mike and I definitely know, and you should know too, just how things shake up here and how this division really beats the heck out of each other, in all honesty, when it comes down to it. So with that being said, let's jump into the Houston Texans here. And let's have an opportunity to speak on what we think about the Houston Texans, Mike, as I send it over to you for your thoughts on Houston.
Yeah, well, well, last year they had the best record, but they also had the best receiver in the game, if not one of the top fantasy players in the game as well. You know, you can't let a guy like that walk. You can't let DeAndre Hopkins simply just leave the building on a giveaway type situation. And I'm going to call it a giveaway. I know they got, you know, David Johnson in return. I know they got, you know, some draft picks. Look, Brandon Cooks is not DeAndre Hopkins. It was great that you brought him in. Will Fuller can't stay healthy. Randall Cobb, I see, you know, bits of talent that have popped off the screen returning kicks and in the slot over the years. Kenny Stills, this is a guy who I always thought was a great player, but for some reason he jumps from team to team. Kiki Kuti, can he stay healthy? DeAndre Carter's more of the return man. I'm just trying to find something that sticks here. Look, the pros say, the sharps in Vegas say that the line for victories for the Texans this year is 7.5. I went through the schedule game by game like I do on every team here, and they're about right. You know, it's always amazing to me that Vegas always seems to get these numbers right, whether it's a total in the game, whether it's the spread. And then you stop and think about it, and you say, wow, they don't build those big buildings in Vegas on paying out winnings. They know it's math. It's all math. They say they're going to go 7.5 wins. I say they're going to hit that number, or thereabouts anyway, at 7-9. I think they have some tough games. They could potentially open the season at 0-3. Listen to this schedule. At Kansas City, home versus Baltimore, then at Pittsburgh. That is a tough 3-game stretch, and they could start the season in the hole. I think they're going to end up salvaging somewhat of a season, but I think it's going to be hard for them to muster a record over 500. I got them going 7-9.
Yeah, you know, it's going to be an interesting season for the Houston Texans because, as you said, Mike, you know, they decided to get rid of arguably the best receiver in the NFL in DeAndre Hopkins, and to make a decision like that, you know, you're like, okay, well, what did you get? And like you said, you know, you get some things that, you know, draft picks and whatnot, but you bring in David Johnson. I haven't been a big fan of their rushing attack. Not a big fan of Lamar Miller. Not a big fan of a lot of what they had. I mean, Arian Foster I liked for a little bit, but he was inconsistent. So, you know, now they have Duke Johnson Jr., who I wasn't a fan of. I thought in Cleveland he was going to be the receiving back, and he was supposed to be the receiving back, but ultimately he really didn't pan out. And with him not panning out the way that you were hoping, or I was hoping that he would, when he went to Houston and people were like, oh, yeah, Duke Johnson's in Houston now, and, you know, we got to pick him up, and we got to look at something like this because it's a great opportunity. I'm like, did you not watch all of his time in Cleveland? Why would he be any different? Sometimes a change of scenery helps you, but, you know, I trust my gut when it comes to a lot of this stuff, and I didn't see the Duke Johnson situation getting any better, and it hasn't. So you bring in David Johnson. And now if you put D. Johnson on their jerseys, one of them has to be DA, one of them has to be DU. So that's just something to think about if you bought a jersey. But the reality of it all is Deshaun Watson is where this offense runs through. It's got to be him. A.J. McCarron's actually backing him up, the guy that we thought could be a potential starter in Buffalo and then got jettisoned to the Raiders after being a backup for Andy Dalton in Cincinnati. So, Mike, how, you know, AJ's really never gotten an opportunity, and now Joe Burrow's in Cincinnati. So, Deshaun Watson is the guy that makes this engine move. Will Fuller, the fifth, is asked to be the number one guy. He's been a 2. I still think he's going to be a 2. Randall Cobb, who spent some time in Dallas after being in Green Bay, he's now in Houston. Brandon Cooks, who I really haven't been sold on, he's in Houston. Kenny Stills, who did some good things in Miami, he's in Houston. And then you have, you know, Kiki Kuti and on and on and on. I mean, Will Fuller, if he stays healthy, he could be a guy that gets you, you know, 11 touchdowns in a season. But ultimately, if he stays healthy is the big key thing to think about here because he hasn't. You know, and when we look at fantasy and whatnot, that's something to really pay attention to is, you know, how healthy can this man stay for you, and can he have a full season? So, and will Brandon Cooks and Randall Cobb and Kenny Stills be enough to help him out? These are 3 former number 1 guys. Can these guys come together to muster up a number 1, even with the 3 of them combined or 2 of them combined? So I think Kenny Stills, if I'm looking at all those names besides Will Fuller the 5th, that's the one I would lean on the most fantasy-wise. But ultimately, Deshaun Watson's a good quarterback. he'll figure it out. But he's got to get some good hands out there to help him out. Jordan Atkins from UCF, who I got to cover when he was at UCF. I'm excited for what he can do. Darren Fells is there, but this will be a season for Jordan to really step up because they need help in the receiving core. And then Laramie Tunsil being on this team at left tackle, that's something to look to as well. I mean, obviously you got J.J. Watt on the other side and everything that comes with J.J. and whatnot. Defensively, not a ton of people I would say to write home about. I don't really get afraid of Houston for defense. So ultimately, for you to say, them to be a 7-win team this season, I think losing DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, it really kills your fantasy value, and ultimately, it kills your reality value going up against some of these teams. So, for the Houston Texans, I think their better days were not necessarily ahead of them right now. They might have been behind them, but you do have the guiding light of Deshaun Watson, who now becomes the main kind of thing to look at right now as we look at this upcoming season. And outside, I mean, they start the season at Kansas City, so it's not like it's going to be easy. And guess what? Right after they're at Kansas City, guess who they get? Baltimore. So the two teams I expect to be in the AFC Championship, arguably, are the two teams they faced off at the beginning of the season. Then they go to Pittsburgh. Then they have Minnesota and Jacksonville at Tennessee. So then they play Green Bay this season. Obviously, they're going to play the Patriots this season. Detroit, I think, has gotten better. They'll be on the road at Detroit. They'll be at Chicago, and we'll see what Nick Foles is doing at that point. So, ultimately, I think it's fair to say, that the Houston Texans, could be a 7-win team this season. I think a lot of it's going to rest on, can Deshaun Watson work his magic with these receivers, and can they step it up? But, this is going to be a tough season for the Houston Texans, and I think all the fantasy value lies with Deshaun Watson. With that being said, we hop into our next team here, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. So, Mike, your thoughts on Indianapolis and what they bring to the table here as we showcase, the Indianapolis Colts, and obviously understand, folks, that they have a new quarterback in Phillip Rivers.
Well, one of the things that I consider when I'm looking at these teams and how they're going to end up is their strength of schedule, how that bodes against them. Houston, we just spoke of, had the 8th this year. Going into this year, they have the 8th toughest schedule. 8, the single digit. Now, if I look further at Indianapolis, Tennessee, and Jacksonville, they're in the teens to the 20s. Indianapolis is 16, so they're right in the middle there. They're more or less on the Mendoza line, if you would. But, I look at this Indianapolis team, I look at the additions they made. First of all, they have one of the best offensive lines in football, so that bodes well. They bring in Phillip Rivers, because Jacoby Brissett, while he was, a journeyman-type player, and he's done well, it just wasn't next-level type stuff. Phillip Rivers, potential Hall of Fame-type player for his longevity in the league, but he does throw his share of interceptions. I'm not sure that's going to be a problem this year simply because of the addition of Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. They already had a solid performer, Marlon Mack, who at times had trouble getting on or staying on the field, but Jonathan Taylor looks like a beast. But remember, for every Jonathan Taylor out there that we see coming in, there's a Monte Ball. These are guys that ran in Wisconsin, look like perennial all-stars or all-pros in the NFL. They get to the NFL and they fall apart. So I'm not going to put all my chips in the middle of the table, go all in on Jonathan Taylor, but I got to tell you, if there was a guy to put your chips all in the middle and go all in, it might be Jonathan Taylor, simply because of the strength of that offensive line. Now, Marlon Mack is going to help complement that effort from Jonathan Taylor. I think it's going to start out as the Marlon Mack show and end up being the Jonathan Taylor show. I think the two of them can combine for over 400, if not pushing 500 touches combined. So that's huge. And don't forget, they have a huge presence in T.Y. Hilton there at receiver. I know they got some no-name or journeyman-type players in Zach Pascal and Paris Campbell, but they just bring in a Michael Pittman, who I'm excited. I think he's a boom-or-bust-type player again. But you look at what they added at the tight end position, Trey Burton. Now you look, Eric Ebron leaves. They still have Jack Doyle, who's a solid and consistent performer when he's healthy. But Trey Burton, I think he was misused in Chicago. Or was it a system of Trey Burton is not as good as we think he is? We're going to find out this year in Indianapolis. I think they have a good enough defense to compete. I think their defensive secondary is strong. I think their Their linebackers are strong as death. Look, this is a middle-of-the-road type division overall. The Vegas line says 8.5 wins for the Colts. I go through their schedule, and that's right where I have them as well. Again, it's amazing how well Vegas can pick these things in the future. 8-8 is what I have the Indianapolis Colts going. They do have some tough road games. I think they'll start out hot. I think they'll wane in the middle and finish up at 500. 8-8 is where I have the Indianapolis Colts this year.
Yeah, I think the Indianapolis Colts, this is going to be an interesting season with Phillip Rivers now being, your starting quarterback. Jacoby Brissett, a guy that I covered at NC State, when he came into the league, I said, listen, if he's a third-string quarterback, don't write him off. If he's a second-string quarterback, don't write him off. If he's a practice squad quarterback, don't write him off. And, he did some work with the New England Patriots, and then he went on to the Colts. And, he filled in when he needed to if Andrew Luck went down and this, that, and whatever. But ultimately, he didn't know he was taking over, and he had to take over last season when Andrew Luck said that he was retiring at the age of 29, just 2 weeks before the start of the season. And Jacoby Brissett, it's been up and down. I think he's talented, but now Phillip Rivers comes in as a project for year one. Phillip's already said that he's going to take over a local high school program at some point. Is that after this year? Is it 2 years from now? I think it might be 2 years. I think you might spend 2 with the Colts. But, this is going to be a project to see. I think the Colts arguably have a great backup situation because Jacoby's had so much experience and he's done some good things. And I think that he does have the talent to be out there and, be a leader. So I think the Colts, just in case they need it, they definitely have it in Jacoby Brissett to get some help from him. But this is going to be a Phillip Rivers project, and I think people need to circle that and understand that. With that being said, they start off the season at Jacksonville, and, this to me, this is going to be a good game. But they have to play the Jets this season. Chicago, they play them early in the season, which is better. I think Chicago is going to get better with time. So playing them in week number 4 is a good thing. They're on the road against them. Cleveland's been up and down and around the corner. Detroit, like I said, I expect them to be better. But, you got Phillip Rivers at quarterback versus Matt Stafford. I like Matty Stafford, but, again, I think Detroit's one of those games that can go either way. And then they play the Raiders and whatnot. So I do think that, Indianapolis, looking at their schedule, I have them in the first few weeks. They arguably could be 3-1, if not 2-2. And then, so if I give them those 3 and I say they win at Detroit, that's 4. And then I look at Vegas, that's 5. And then they have to, win a couple of these games in division. They could get to 7 or 8 wins, and I think putting them at 8-8 is not too shocking to say. I think it actually helps Phillip Rivers to say, you know what, I'll stay another season. But they have Marlon Mack, who's talented. I covered when he was at South Florida. And with having him coming, being there for the last couple seasons, and you have Nyheim Hines, who I covered at NC State, and then you bring in Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin, who's just a bull. And Jonathan, they're worried. Okay, well, the guy's carried the ball so much in college. What's he going to do in the pros? Has he already carried the ball too many times? How much life is he going to have here? Well, he's got Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines. And if Nyheim is your change of pace and Marlon can run it between the tackles, now all of a sudden you got a 3-headed running back system where Jonathan Taylor doesn't have to have 30 carries a game or 20 a game or 25. So this is a great situation for him. T.Y. Hilton has some life here with Phillip Rivers being his quarterback and hopefully staying healthy. Paris Campbell, who we expected to be a young gun, he's got an opportunity to step up here, and we'll see what he can do. And then, there's some other young talent that's on this team, like Artavis Scott and Doris Fountain and so on and so forth. Jack Doyle is there, and like Mike said, we'll figure out who Trey Burton actually is and Mo Alley Cox as well as we step into this season. But I think the Colts arguably could get one more win than the Houston Texans. And if that's true, like Mike had them at 7-9 for Houston, 8-8 for Indianapolis, I'm not going to argue with that. I think that could be the case, and I think we could see the Colts jump ahead here this season and put themselves in a position to, not look too bad, not look too shabby as they get set for the 2020-2021 campaign and beyond that. With that being stated, inside of Mon Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factories, what's poppin'? We'll take a step aside as we continue to talk about the AFC South and analyzing the AFC South. In the meantime, as we are on this fast break, make sure that you take the time to join us on our Facebook group, Winning Fantasy Football. That is Winning Fantasy Football. And we'll be back right after this with the Jacksonville Jaguars here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Charney's Men's Clothing is your one-stop shop for your men's dress up and dress down wear. Located on 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse, Charney's Men's Clothing is proud to be your trusted name for decades in suits, sport coats, tuxedos, and all accessories. Charney's Men's Clothing also provides sports and leisure-themed casual wear for the everyday man. Stop in and see our welcome and friendly staff on 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, located on 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, is home to over 40 flavors with more than 200 flavors in their total wheelhouse. Sky's the limit for this sweet and savory Central New York company. Keep it local at your parties, fundraisers, wedding showers, baby showers, and more by calling 315-450-MA-PA. That's 315-450-6272 for popcorn bars with custom flavors and colors at your upcoming event. Make sure to visit them on 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. And for more information, go to maandpazsnacks.com. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you? The Millhouse Market, located on 3790 New York 13 in Pulaski, New York, is worth the drive every time. Make sure you download their app by going to the Google Play or Apple App Store today on any of your devices, and you'll have their entire menu at your fingertips. From their homemade breads and homemade desserts all the way through to their brick oven pizzas, over 30 different sandwiches, each of them named after a family that helped to settle Pulaski and create the beautiful area that we have today, along with their salads and their bowls and everything else that they have to offer. The Millhouse Market, with everything at your fingertips, contactless pay to keep you safe, and you don't even have to hand your card to anybody. And of course, you can drive up to their pickup window, stay in your car, grab your food, and go. So making it safe, easy, and always turning those taste buds into a party every single day. The Millhouse Market, just when you think you know what your favorite is, you go ahead and try something else on the menu. 3790 New York 13 in Pulaski, New York. The Millhouse Market is worth the drive every time. With that being said, Mike and I are here inside of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora's analysis by division as we go through these divisions and speak on the teams. And we have obviously started last week with the AFC North, and this week we're here with the AFC South. And then we'll head to the East and the West before we jump to the NFC. We have the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts that we already discussed. And we are now moving on to the other side of this with the Jacksonville Jaguars and Tennessee Titans. Mike Sofka is with us of Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com, and of course our fantasy football group on Facebook, which is Winning Fantasy Football. You could join that today by going to your search bar on Facebook and typing Winning Fantasy Football and simply clicking join. Here inside the Fantasy Football Power Hour, here for you every Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, minimally, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. And some great news from the Wildcat. They're now open with their bartenders 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. The restaurant, so the food is open from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., but the pizza is available all the way till 11. So you got the opportunity to dine in or out, and you have the opportunity for takeout and delivery, all available on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. And now we have normal hours of 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. and 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. when it comes to the kitchen being open. Pizza available to you all the way through from 11 to 11. I want to thank the Wildcat for all that they do in our community. And as we all navigate through this, especially as small business owners, please do whatever you can to support us. We need you now more than ever. So thank you and God bless for that. With that being said, Mike and I are now jumping into our conversation on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so Mike will take it away first with his thoughts on Jacksonville as we get set for the season coming up here. And as we get set for the season, we will have Mike here talking with us about the Jacksonville Jaguars and his thoughts on Jacksonville as we bring him in here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Mike will be giving his thoughts on Jacksonville. So, Mike, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, last year Jacksonville looked like Jacksonville. I mean, there was times where you looked at Jacksonville and you said, wow, that's great. Oh, man, this is a team going places. And then you take a look at them again and you're like, what happened? Why? And then we do this. That's a famous saying we have. And then they do this. So, the highs and the lows are tremendous. Hopefully those are going to taper off. But, I'm not too sure. What I am sure is I think they're going to have more of an air attack style with Jay Gruden there. I think they're not going to be afraid to air out the ball. I think they're not going to be afraid to throw it to DJ Chark, Dede Westbrook. Laviska Shenault is a guy I'm really excited about. They bring Tyler Eifert in at tight end, possibly get him some newfound steadiness at the tight end position, which we've been desperately needing for years if you're a Jacksonville fan. But it all centers around Leonard Fournette. How many carries is he going to get? How is he going to react? Is he going to continue to catch the ball out of the backfield? I think with the open-air attack assault from Jay Gruden, I'm thinking with the combination of Leonard Fournette and Gardner Minshew at one time led the nation in passing out of Washington State. So let's not forget that. This was a underestimated young man. Injury thrust him into the starting lineup. He made the most of his opportunity. Next man up, that's the NFL. Look, the Vegas Sharps, they have Jacksonville at 4.5 wins. 4.5 wins. I think the defense is too good for that. I think Miles Jack being able to move back to the will linebacker, he covered in the middle last year. They're able to bring in Joe Schobert, and I think that's going to be a great addition. You got a guy that can cover the middle. Then you got the weak side guy who can make all the tackles. So I think it's going to go far for Jacksonville. However, like I said initially, and then they do that. Jacksonville is a team that I like a lot, but I'm going to keep myself in check. I'm going to have them going over the Vegas line of 4.5. I think this is a 6 or 7 win team. Right now, as I look at the schedule, I got them going 6-10.
It's funny that you say that, Mike, because I'm sitting back here in my chair in the studio wondering, is Mike going to say exactly what I'm thinking? Is he going to literally think that they're going to have the same amount of wins? And then will he say the record? And, Mike, you just said the exact snake eye thing, and that is that 6-10. That's where I have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's where I believe they will be at the end of the season, a 6-10 team. Their schedule is going to put them against Indianapolis, like I said, in week number 1, and then they're at Tennessee, against Miami, at Cincinnati. They could come through that at 3-1, which I would anticipate, if not maybe 4-0, but I'm going to say probably 3-1. Other games, I think they could take the game against Detroit at home, as well as kind of where Cleveland's at this season when they face them on November 29th, and then they'll face Chicago toward the end of the season, which I think may be kind of dicey depending on where they are. And at that point, will we see Chicago come to Jacksonville with Nick Foles going up against Gardner Minshew, the two former the two guys that were on the same team last year in Jacksonville, facing off against each other on Sunday, December 27th, which will be interesting to see. But ultimately, I think Jacksonville, I'm right there with you, Mike. I honestly had 6-10, and that's exactly what you said. I like Gardner Minshew at quarterback. I like that they brought in Mike Lennon to help teach him. Jake Luton, who people don't know, I think there's some good to be had about the quarterback they picked up later on in the draft. And then you have Leonard Fournette, who's going to get some help from a change of pace guy like Chris Thompson, who can take that ball and go for 20-yard spurts, 30-yard spurts at times. Coming from Washington, he has a connection to Jay Gruden. And then coming from Cincinnati, who has a connection to Jay Gruden, Tyler Eifert, tight end there. If he stays healthy, now all of a sudden you got a guy who was a top 5, top 10 tight end when he was staying healthy, and Cincinnati was doing some good things back a few years. Ryquil Armstead, as you know, I'm sold on him. A big fan of him. I think he's a power back that could do some things to take the pressure off for Leonard Fournette. And if Leonard doesn't play his cards right, or if he gets injured, which hopefully he does not, Ryquil Armstead, I think, could jump right into that and do some great things. DJ Chark Jr., who's been a big part of what you've been watching here on the highlight reel. And once again, this video belongs to the NFL and its partners. It does not belong to us. It belongs to the NFL and its partners, as you're watching here. So I want to thank them for their footage. Chris Conley, who I think can be a locker room leader, and I hope he steps up and does it. DJ Chark Jr., we've seen him do some great things. I picked him up last season in the middle of the season because nobody really had Jacksonville receivers, and I got him, and he was a huge get for me in fantasy during the season. So you always got to make sure you're scouring the waiver wire and free agency, as Mike and I will tell you, and continue to be on you about throughout the season and make sure that we're helping where we can. Dede Westbrook, another young guy, Laviska Shenault Jr., their third-round pick. Keelan Cole, another guy who could do some good things. C.J. Board, who's still on the roster, could do some good things. So I think there's a lot of talent here. Could be the best that it's at in the last few seasons for Jacksonville with this young talent. And I would definitely look for an uptick of DJ Chark, if not that for Chris Conley as well. Obviously they have what they need here for the offensive line. A lot of guys that have been around, Brandon Linder and A.J. Cann, who spent a long time in Jacksonville. Josh Allen and Aaron Lynch allow for a hybrid at defensive end / outside linebacker. You're also going to get that hybrid feeling, from K'Lavon Chaisson as well. So they could do some great things for you there. Yannick Ngakoue, if he continues to be embattled with the team and causes some issue, you can easily have your mixture of Josh Allen, Aaron Lynch, and K'Lavon Chaisson, and then go to your linebackers, Joe Schobert, who will be at the middle now, Miles Jack, who's on the outside where he should be, and Cassius Marsh, who could be out there with Leon Jacobs as well, Shaquille Quarterman, who I covered at Miami, Quincy Williams, who stepped in last year for a little bit as one of their draft picks, and Joe Giles Harris, who I also covered in college and had the opportunity to talk with, who came from Duke. So I think there's a lot of talent and a lot of depth here that you might not know on Jacksonville's defense. You might think they lost a step, but in my opinion, they have not. So I'm excited about what they can do here defensively. C.J. Henderson and Trey Herndon, I think, will do a good job. Ronnie Harrison taking over there at strong safety, who they had brought in from Alabama a couple seasons ago, and Gerard Wilson still being there on the team. I honestly think Jacksonville has a lot of good additions that they brought in the draft, and I think they got a lot of things to be happy about ultimately when push comes to shove defensively in general. So, I do have them at 6-10. I hope they shock me and get to 8, but ultimately the Jacksonville Jaguars have a lot to be happy about as far as I'm concerned throughout their depth chart on offense and defense as well as on special teams, with one of the most exciting and personality-driven kickers that you'll find in the NFL. Also one of the best dressed in Josh Lambo, who can rock a hat. So appreciate them all, and I think there'll be some good things to come here this season for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And now we will step into our final team that we'll have to talk about in this discussion of the AFC South, and that is the Tennessee Titans. So, Mike, take it away with Tennessee and your thoughts on the Titans this season.
Yeah, Tennessee is they're always one of the teams you always got to consider in the AFC South. There were years where it was either Jacksonville or Tennessee or Jacksonville. Then they mix in Indianapolis there. And then Houston with the run. Well, now that Nuke Hopkins is gone, I think we saw the run that Tennessee made with Ryan Tannehill last year, a quarterback. You got to question, can they do that again? Can they put that type of run together? Marcus Mariota was inconsistent at best. He was somewhat injury-prone. I think he tried to play through injuries. I think that affected his performance. They brought in Ryan Tannehill, and I don't even think they expected that team to respond and them to take off like they did around Tannehill. The problem is this. Last year, the drop-off from Mariota to Tannehill, we saw that was actually an improvement. This year, if Ryan Tannehill can do it again, and history tells us he will not, unfortunately, well, the drop-off is huge. Who's ever heard of Logan Woodside or Cole McDonald? That's the drop-off we're talking about at quarterback. But I don't think they're going to rely on just the quarterback. I don't think they're going to rely just on Ryan Tannehill because they got the beast. They have the horse in Derrick Henry. This is a guy they're going to continue to feed the rock to. He's large and in charge. He can make things happen. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. This guy is a machine. He can break one at any time. You never know. Is this guy going to go all the way? And boom, he does. Then they got receivers on the outside. A.J. Brown exploded on the scene last year. Adam Humphries hasn't quite been Adam Humphries, the guy we considered to be one of the better slot players. He fell off last year. And Corey Davis is supposed to be the number one guy there. He hasn't shown number one production ever. Look, Jonnu Smith is a bit of a drop-off at tight end as well from Delanie Walker. I get it. But this is a year he has to step up. Anthony Versker as well. These are step-up type years. You look at the defense, though. The defense have always been a consistent component of the Tennessee Titans. The New England Patriots of the South under Vrabel. This is a team who's not necessarily going to have any names that are going to blow you away, but as a team, they're going to get it done with solid performers. Rashaan Evans, Harold Landry, Adoree Jackson, Kevin Byard, Malcolm Butler. These are names, and I think they did well in the draft to reload those type of players as well. I think Tennessee is going to do just fine. For the Vegas Sharps, look, the Vegas Sharps have them at 8.5. I got them coming in just under that. I have them as an 8-8 football team. I don't have anybody, though, in the South better than 8 wins. So this is up for grabs. This could be between a 9 or a 10-win Colts team or a Titans team in the South. It's going to be an amazing season to watch AFC South football. It always is. I think it's going to be a downgrade from last year by 1 game. Instead of 9-7, again, I have them at 8-8.
Yeah, you know, the Tennessee Titans, and I do think it's going to come down to Tennessee having a shot at this. They always seem to have a shot at the end of the season. Ryan Tannehill getting an extension and getting paid. He was a test coming from Miami where, you know, he had been injured more than once and things just didn't seem to be working out for him, and he came to Tennessee. They saw what they needed to see in a season. He helped to make them a playoff caliber team, and now they want him to be there for the next few years. They locked in Derrick Henry, which I thought was great, right before the clock struck 12, essentially, for Derrick Henry, and having the opportunity to sign an extension to his contract as opposed to being on a franchise tag. They were able to lock him in and get it done. I'm happy that they did. It gives him some security. I think it helps him to not stay pissed at this team, and maybe they have a shot of keeping him around for a little while and, you know, building this thing in Tennessee now that they did what they needed to do. Even if they did it in the 11th hour, at least they got it done, as opposed to what's happening with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. Ryan Tannehill, you know, we're going to see. We're going to see where he's at. Like you said, Cole McDonald and Logan Woodside, you know, Cole McDonald had a farm, and nobody knows where the heck it is. I mean, we don't know what's going on with this guy. We don't know what's on his farm. We don't know what he's planting. We don't know what he's growing. We don't know if the grass is greener. All we know is that it's Ryan Tannehill or bust. There's no Marcus Mariota there anymore. Not that, you know, somebody who's an interception machine is somebody that you want to be your backup, but I would imagine it would put them in a better situation than a Woodside or a McDonald's. Not to knock these guys by any stretch of the imagination, but it comes down to Ryan Tannehill here. And Derrick Henry, normally he was having some other guys in the backfield like a Deion Lewis. Now he has Darrington Evans and Sonoris Perry back there with him, Cameron Scarlett, and so on and so forth. The wide receiver situation, Tajay Sharp, they got a lot of young guys and trying to figure out which one of them was going to pan out. Well, Tajay Sharp isn't there anymore, and now you're looking at A.J. Brown, who they brought in recently, Corey Davis, who they brought in a few years ago at Western Michigan, who left there before my buddy took over as head coach, Tim Lester, and Adam Humphries is still on the team. Somebody's going to have to step up here. I would imagine that A.J. Brown is going to be the guy that obviously fantasy-wise you lean toward, but a Corey Davis, you know, finally stepping up, staying healthy, and putting himself in a good position or an Adam Humphries doing that is going to take some pressure off of A.J. and do something for this team here. Jonnu Smith, he's finally got it. Delaney Walker is not the guy here. Last season it was cut and paste every week for me. Derrick Henry, Delaney Walker for fantasy advice. Now Jonnu Smith is the guy. He's going to have to step up and show what he can do, and if he can be consistent in this situation. And so, you know, I think Tennessee has some weapons on offense, and I think they have the ability. I mean, defensively, what they've been able to do, they got my guy Harold Landry on the team from BC, who I covered in his recruitment coming out of high school. Rashaan Evans, Malcolm Butler is on this team. You remember Malcolm is the guy that how could they leave him on the bench when they were playing in the Super Bowl, speaking on the Patriots. And so, you know, I think Tennessee is a team that is going to end this season with 8 to 9 wins. I think they could win the division, or they're going to be fighting for a wild card. But if you put them up against the Colts or the Texans, I would give them a slight edge this season. They started off at Denver, and I think, you know, going up against Denver and then Jacksonville at home, at Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Houston in a 3-game home stretch. Then they play 5 of 6 at home when they play Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Houston at home, at Cincinnati, Chicago at home, Indianapolis at home. So I think they could come out of that in really good shape, especially because they'll be in Tennessee. So ultimately, for me, I think this team could be in a really prime place before they even get to the last few games of the season, and have some of these tough games at Baltimore on November 22nd, and then at Green Bay second to last week, at Houston in the last week. So they do end the season with a majority of games on the road. They will actually play 5 of their last 7 on the road, but they'll get 5 out of 6 at home early on. And so I think that the Tennessee Titans they're going to take care of business early in the season, get themselves to 5 or 6 wins, and then only have to win 1 or 2 after that. I see them as an 8-8 team with an outside shot at 9-7. If they get to 9-7, I think they win the division and ultimately put themselves in a place to obviously represent in the playoffs. But I think this is Tennessee's year to win the division. I think Indianapolis is going to push them. Houston will a little bit, and then I think Jacksonville will ultimately fall into 4th place. And I don't know if that's going to be enough to keep Doug Marrone around. Maybe for one season, but you got Jay Gruden there and you got Ben McAdoo. You got 3 head coaches on one team, and they did the same thing to Doug. Could they just move somebody up? I wouldn't like to see them to do that. I'd like to see them bring in somebody who's got a good track record, maybe some experience, and do what they need to do. But if they go 6-10, I don't see Jacksonville keeping Doug Marrone around for long. But the Tennessee Titans, I think, are going to do the opposite, and I think they'll get to 8-8, if not 9-7. This is a team, when they're playing some of these Packers and Steelers teams and whatnot, I think can give them hell more than other teams in the AFC South, which is why I think they'll get to 8 or 9 and ultimately be able to hoist the divisional trophy of the AFC South. Any final pieces, Mike, here on the AFC South before we wrap up today?
No, I think you and I are on the same page here as far as what we think we can expect out of the division. It's always a tough division. It's always, for me, it's kind of like the AFC North, where it's tough. I mean, you look forward to watching those games. I look forward to watching AFC South games because you can kind of throw the record out the window a lot of times, and I think that's an amazing thing to have year in, year out, to have that consistency at competition in your division. That's huge.
Yeah, and so like you said, I think we're on the same page with this. We ultimately have the Tennessee Titans at 8-9 wins, the Colts with 8, the Texans around somewhere of 7, and Jacksonville with 6, which also leads to your point that you had at the beginning of our conversation of how close-knit the division is. And, you could see, 9-8-7-6 or 8-8-7-6 and how close this division will be once again for the AFC South, which is interesting. And I think one of the underrated divisions and how close they are and how things can shift and whatnot. So ultimately, we really did agree throughout this division, which I think is something cool here this morning to be able to share with everybody, that we're kind of seeing the same thing. And if you look historically, this is how they've been. They play each other tight. Some of them steal games from each other, but ultimately Jacksonville has been ending on the backside. The Colts, I think, are trending up. Houston somewhere in the middle, and then we'll see if they could stay up without DeAndre Hopkins. And Tennessee is the team that I think is the hottest right now. So, with the Colts at their tails. So it was great to have the conversation as always, Mike. You can find Mike at HallOfFameFantasyFootball.com. And, of course, you can find us both on the Winning Fantasy Football group on Facebook, which you can join for free today. Mike, as always, thank you for all your expertise and your work, and I will see you for the AFC East next week.
Sounds good, Dan. Thanks a lot. And just a reminder, everybody, we're 6 weeks out. We're about 6 weeks away from the kickoff, hopefully, of the NFL season. I've updated the rankings on the site. You can always find information and a special starting next week to get you geared up for your fantasy football season at HallOfFameFantasyFootball.com. And, of course, like Dan says, check out our Facebook group at Winning Fantasy Football. Dan, it was a pleasure as always. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you next time.
All right, man. Be safe and take care. Coming from Mike Sofka once again here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora as we are discussing division by division to get you set for a very hopeful 2020-2021 season for the NFL. Thank you so much to each and every single one of you that joins us here inside of the Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub every Wednesday between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and usually a little bit longer than that. We always go past 11 more often than not. So I want to thank Mike for everything, and Mike and I round out the AFC South with the Titans at either 8-8 or 9-7. So we ultimately have agreed So we have agreed, and I want to share this here on the feed, we have agreed that this is how the AFC South will end this season. We have number 1, the Titans, at 8-8 or 9-7. We have number 2, the Colts, at 8-8. We have number 3, the Texans, at 7-9. And number 4, my Jaguars, at 6-10. So that's where we have everybody rounding out this season inside the AFC South with our predictions for you. And we will have each division. We've done the North already. You can see that video, and I'll share it again on our social media so you have it. But you can watch the video on the AFC North. We just had the AFC South. We'll do the East next week, then the West. Then we'll jump to the NFC and do the exact same thing. And that'll put us right at the start of the NFL season, hopefully, and God willing. Safety and security for us all. And let's God willing, have a season and get everybody back to work, not just the NFL, but all of us and those of you that are listening and watching. Get everybody doing what we love and loving what we do, God willing. So, with that being said, we'll take a step aside for our final fast break of today's episode of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and I'll let you know what's coming up for the rest of the week. Hard to believe we're already going to be stepping into Thursday right after this.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
This is Jim Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacted the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have at any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on WakeUpCallDT.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT, as well as on Facebook Live on Facebook.com/Live Now DT. So we appreciate you being here inside of Ma & Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factories. What's poppin'? Make sure you head off to Ma & Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory on 201 Old 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York, and get your favorites today. 50 flavors at any given time of their kettle corn and over 200 flavors in their wheelhouse. You can also order and have it delivered to your doorstep by going to maandpaspopcorn.com. That's Ma, A-N-D, paspopcorn.com. So make sure you check them out. Jason Henderson, thank you, sir. Absolutely phenomenal in our video that we did before here on Facebook, and obviously to those of you listening on mixlr.com/WakeUpCallDT, hour number 1 that we had with Jason Henderson. Just a tremendous human being, and I'm so happy for him, and I'm so proud, and I'm thankful that he told his story about what happened with Syracuse and what ultimately helped him make his decision with Old Dominion, and made him feel like that was the right fit. And Ricky Rain, just getting an awesome guy. So I'm very, very, very happy with that, as well as the opportunity that we had to speak with you on the AFC South and break down and analyze and predict the upcoming season for the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Tennessee Titans, all brought to you by the Wildcat Sports Pub in our Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat, who's now open from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. The bar is there. Your bartenders, your favorite bartenders, are back. The dine-in opportunity is there. The dine-outside opportunity, the curbside pickup, the delivery. You can call them at 315-487-2222. That's 315-487-2222. And, of course, you can go see them on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. And make sure you head over there today to the Wildcat. I love it. I'm so happy. 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and the kitchen's open until 10 p.m., but pizza will be available until 11 p.m. close. With that being said, we thank you so much for tuning in Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, listening here on mixlr.com/WakeUpCallDT, and watching on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT, as well as finding us inside of these beautiful apps and podcasting places: Stitcher, Spotify, MixLR, YouTube, iTunes Podcast, TuneIn Radio, Podbean, the RSS feed, and iHeartRadio, all by searching Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. You'll get the show there. Over 1,400 episodes at your fingertips for free. Don't waste time. Go listen today. And, of course, you can ask Alexa to play the latest episode of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and she'll take care of you for that. I want to thank all my Central and Upstate New York partners: Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Mon Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, Avicoli's, Honda City of Liverpool, Chick-fil-A Cicero, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Borio's Restaurant, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, the Millhouse Market, Charney's Menswear and Tuxedos, and Trapper's Pizza Pub. And, of course, when you have the opportunity and you want to quench your thirst, make sure that you do it with Coca-Cola as well as with Body Armor. And remember that only you can make you better. With that being said, have a terrific day. I will have John Phillips. I cannot wait. I tell you all the time how, you have those interviews that I just wait and just hope patiently that I get the opportunity. I've wanted to interview offensive lineman John Phillips for a very long time. He went to CBA, my alma mater, and then he went to Boston College and was coached by Steve Adazio, a friend of mine. So I have the opportunity to have John Phillips from Central New York on the show tomorrow to speak on his time in Boston College, speak on his time at CBA, and just in general tell us his story. I've been wanting to tell John Phillips' story for years. I finally get to do it tomorrow at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. And I'll talk baseball and everything else with Papa Joe from the Sunshine State tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So make sure you're tuning in on July 30th. God bless. No stress. Do your best, as always. Find us on Facebook at WakeUpCallDT, as well as on Twitter at CallDT, and Instagram at WakeUpCall_DT. And I look forward to talking with you all soon. I hope you have a great day. Please stay safe. Please be good to each other, good to yourself. Don't waste a minute. And if you want something in life, get after it. And Jerry said at least everybody else's team has a name because he's a Redskins fan. And Jerry said, good job, Dan. Great show. Naturally. Thank you, sir. I love it, and I appreciate your support as always. Thank you to everybody here, and of course on this video, thank you to the NFL and its partners for providing footage of the Texans, the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Titans so that we could share that with you today as we spoke about it. Shout out to Mike Sofka. I love you, brother. Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com, and make sure you join us on our Facebook group, Winning Fantasy Football. Join it today. It's free. It's a closed group, so you have to click join. Go to Winning Fantasy Football in your fantasy or in your Facebook tab here and join us today. And of course, thank you to Jason Henderson. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for going after what you want to go after in your life. And Jason, I don't have enough words. I am so proud of you. And I cannot wait to see what you're going to do. So stay blessed and keep staying humble and kind. And I'll talk with you all soon. Have a great Wednesday. Take care of yourself.